So the point of today's screen recording is to look at energy security and TNCs, and we need to be thinking about how TNCs but also other players control world oil supplies. Now, let's start off with just a video clip and just want you to think about how significant do you think the role of TNCs is in controlling effectively the global energy mix. And we're going to just consider off what is quite an extremist viewpoint potentially. Okay, so whilst watching this video clip, just think about the relevance and significance of what they're talking about.
And what about transportation? The prevailing means of transportation in our societies is by automobile and aircraft, both of which predominantly need fossil fuels to run. In the case of the automobile, the battery technology needed to power an electric car that can go over 100 miles an hour for over 200 miles on one charge exists, and has existed for many years. However, due to battery patents controlled by the oil industry, which limits their availability to maintain market share, coupled with political pressure from the energy industry, the accessibility and affordability of this technology is limited. There is absolutely no reason other than pure, corrupt profit interest that every single vehicle in the world cannot be electric and utterly clean, with zero need for gasoline. As far as airplanes, it is time we realize that this means of travel is inefficient, cumbersome, slow, and causes far too much pollution. This is a maglev train. It uses magnets for propulsion. It is fully suspended by a magnetic field and requires less than 2% of the energy used for plane travel. The train has no wheels, so nothing can wear out. The current maximum speed of versions of this technology, as used in Japan, is 361 miles per hour. However, this version of the technology is very dated. An organization called ET3, which has connections with the Venus Project, has established a tube-based maglev that can travel up to 4,000 miles per hour in a motionless, frictionless tube, which can go over land or underwater.
So, something to think about there. If you want to watch more of that video, you can just type into Google into YouTube energy zeitgeist, and you can start to figure out some of the interesting perspectives on this. But please bear in mind that it is potentially a little bit biased. Now, okay, we need to be considering the role of effectively different players, and in this we're going to look at power groups. We're going to consider OPEC. We're also going to consider TNCs. I'm going to start off by considering OPEC. I'm just going to show you a quick second video and can think about how OPEC are managing their oil supply and controlling global oil supplies effectively. Okay, so this is the second video we want to show you today, and this is going to start us thinking about the fact that OPEC are trying to control oil prices. This is from CAN of June of 2012. Okay.
Uprisings throughout North Africa would shut down 90% of Libya's production for months. Military exercises in the Strait of Hormuz. Rising demand from China. Those factors kept markets on edge and drove prices higher last year and through the first quarter of 2012. But those fears have been trumped by a euro crisis in Greece and Spain that is sapping demand not only in Europe but also in the major emerging markets. In the span of just 2 months, the tide has turned, and oil prices have slumped by more than $20 a barrel, with the global benchmark crude, North Sea Brent, hovering around $100 a barrel.
You don't want to be defending an oil price when it's falling. You want to put the defenses in before the fall happens. I think in this instance, it's possibly too late for OPEC to try and defend $100 a barrel.
It sets the stage in Vienna for a classic OPEC tug of war. On one side, the price hawks, like Iran and Venezuela, that want to maximize revenues versus those known as the doves, led by Saudi Arabia and the UAE, that don't want to kill off an economic recovery with high oil prices. It is a difficult balancing act. In a post-Arab Spring environment, the major Gulf states have ramped up their spending on education, housing, jobs programs, and even their shiny new skylines. In order to protect those programs, analysts say they need to try to intervene in the market to set a floor of $80 a barrel. This has to be brokered by the veterans
So when you consider it, OPEC are interested in keeping oil prices high because it maximises their profits. Okay, now who are OPEC? Well, we've got four main players who control the oil supply in the energy game. You've got OPEC, you've got oil producing countries outside of OPEC, you've got TNCs, and you've got China as a country who are controlling this. Now, OPEC are one aspect of this, and we can consider them as effectively an NGO, a non-governmental organisation. Group of 12 countries, they hold huge amounts of power, and the key thing is they contain and control 2/3 of the world's current oil reserves and around a third of the world's current oil production. Think about how significant OPEC's market share. I want to pause this and actually do a little bit more research into OPEC now. Okay. You look at this map actually gives you a bit of more of an idea of OPEC. So we've got all our different oil producing countries. The dark red are part of the oil producing countries, the blue are OPEC nations. Note where the OPEC nations are. We're largely looking at Middle Eastern countries, but we have some countries who aren't members of OPEC. Sudan, major new oil player. Brazil, another new major oil player. Okay, and Russia, another major oil player in the world. And as new reserves are found, we can find new sources. And one of the things you need to start considering is the fact that the tar sands and oil shales, which we talked about last time, could become significantly important for the future, as maybe might the Falkland Islands down here as well. Okay, so think about that and consider how significant their impact is. Now, second thing we need to look at is the role of TNCs. Now, TNCs vary in their role. A traditional TNC that we understand is something like British Petroleum. Okay, however, there are huge numbers of TNCs which are actually state controlled. Saudi Arabian Oil Company, the National Iranian Oil Company, all of these are state controlled oil companies. Okay, it takes a long time to get down to our state owned companies. Okay, and on here you can see the fact that these companies are largely owned by our high income countries, so Exxon, Shell, BP, Chevron, ConocoPhillips, Total. Okay, all of these are different. Okay, these are our state owned. Okay, and that means that they are able to control suppliers, whereas these are doing things for themselves. Okay, and a lot of these TNCs have significant levels in their investment. I'm going to ask you to pick one TNC that is state owned and one that is not, and investigate them further. Now, the handout you got last week mentioned Gazprom as one example, so you can explore this further, or you can choose one of these others. Okay, Petrobras is the Brazilian example, for instance. Okay, and then you can consider a non-state-owned company, such as Shell. On here we have an example of different of what Shell are doing in Nigeria to control oil supplies. Now, you can either pause this and use this on the screen, or if you ask your teacher, we'll be able to give you a copy of this. Okay, but they're very, very significant in terms of the various different things they can do. You need to make sure that you're now developing your understanding of the roles of TNCs, both state-owned and non-state-owned, and the role of OPEC as players in the controlling of oil. Also consider how they impact on the environmental risk. Think about BP in the Gulf of Mexico, and also consider their role in controlling oil prices as well. That ends today's session. Thank you.